The English consider themselves the best English speakers, just out of pure coincidence, because they live in a place called England. Welcome to ULM Hex, the Universal Language Media Exchange. Today we're talking about language. A lot of our videos are about society and culture. I love language. I think it's so fun. I think it's an enlightening subject. I think it's something that really encourages a lot of self-reflection. And today I want to talk about something that I was just reading about. It's phonemes. And, you know, I'm freezing right now. That's why I have a blanket on my shoulders. So phonemes are what you would break down the sounds of a language into. And it's not necessarily a different sound. It's more a distinction that they make in that language. So it could be a different sound, but for example, I read while reading about this just now that T and D, like as in ta-da, apparently there's a Japanese word, something like ta-da, and the Japanese don't distinguish, they don't hear that difference between the t and the d. And for us in English, a distinction we don't hear, which they might hear in another example I got reading online, Icelandic, they might hear this distinction between k and k, or an aspirated K sound, which the K breathes, you breathe through the K a little bit, like in kill. But if you say skill, you don't do that k thing. So it's a very small distinction, and it doesn't change the meaning. Like if I said kill and then skill, you wouldn't, it wouldn't change the meaning of the word skill. It might sound somewhat odd, but you're gonna know skill because there's no other word you could confuse it with. So for us, it's not a phoneme in English, and for them, it is a phoneme. So anyway, these different sounds that make up what a language is, I was just wondering about it because, you know what I was thinking about? Typing on a keyboard, and I was thinking how lucky we are to have this Roman alphabet. It must be such a pain to type in Chinese because of all the different strokes that you have. It's like, how do you do that? How do you get those strokes to, it's just, and I'm thinking that's bad luck because they didn't see the computer coming. Of course, I'm sure it would have actually probably been just as good of a system writing with pen or quill or whatever. But now, it's like not ideal, I don't think. I think we have it good being able to just go letter by letter and form our words. And I was just thinking about the efficiency of languages and the building blocks being syllables, and what are those made of? Sounds. And what I was just reading here on Quora, which I found really interesting, was that they say English has a really high number of these distinct sounds, which makes it quite a robust language when you're learning to actually pick up on all the different pronunciations. And this example here I find really interesting because we say we have 5 vowels. In German, there are 3 more letters. So the umlauts. You have A, E, I, O, U, and then you have E, U, and Ü. You get the impression you have more vowel sounds in German. And you might. I haven't read about how many you have, but just the 5 letters, the 5 vowels, represent like 20 sounds in English. So if you aren't paying close attention when you're copying, basically, the only real way you're going to be able to learn it is by just copying the way other people pronounce the word. And I've been saying these words my whole life. We have 5 words here. All different sounds for the letter A. And I would never have been able to tell you these distinctions when I was learning it. And now, if I pronounce it just naturally, I'm like, oh yeah, that's different than that. So the A sound in father compared to fat. Like, and when all the consonants around it are similar, but it's still not clear exactly what was the difference there, father and fat. So yeah, that's way too complicated to actually like intentionally do all the time. Like, which was that? If you're learning it from afar, if you will, if you're learning it in a book, how do you know? The list goes on. Fate. of course, fate, you can learn the spelling rules. The E at the end of fate tells you that it's going to be a hard A. That's what they taught us, hard A and soft A. And then fastidious, or fastidious, fastidious, fate, fat, father. So that's just 4, actually. I don't know. I really want to look more into it. I want to know what exactly are all the sounds. I think, like, if you study English at university, you would learn all these phonetics, at the very least, the sounds, the consonants, and the vowel sounds. Like the difference between, I know in the United States, dog and father in some regions is pronounced almost identically. But in the Northeast, we've preserved the difference between father and dog. And to be honest, I'm not sure which it is in the Midwest where they pronounce, which they use. Father, dog. Or do they dog, father? No, I think they say like dog. We have a simple keyboard here. We got the 26 characters, and then there's actually a myriad of sounds that could be coming from any of those consonants or vowels, but in this case, the vowels. In German, you have like which is the A with 2 dots over it, the umlaut, A. And it has a very similar sound to the E sound, eh, 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 eh. And I remember making a video saying, just trying to like help people who are trying to get past that initial steep learning curve of what are these like umlauts? And actually fastidious is a pretty good one. Fastidious is pretty similar to fastidious, but hätte Fahrradkette. That's what I said. Like it's almost the same as E. I was trying to make it easier for people and just be like, just forget about like this special Just pronounce it like an E, and you'll be much better off than like if you were to pronounce it as an A. And someone was like, well, you did it right in your video. You made the distinction between and but you didn't notice it, and you told people just pronounce it like an E, and you actually pronounced hätte and kette differently. I don't think you noticed that, and to be honest, I can't really barely hear any difference, but that comes from just copying. It really isn't something that you deliberately somehow control very, very fine, precise, calibrated. Exactly. It's just copying. That's the beauty of ULMX. You have that copy opportunity where you're encouraged to copy, and you can always compare, and you hear what you just said, and then you hear the native speaker. There's no perfection in a native speaker's pronunciation, but it's real, and they are really as close as you can get to the source as far as copying the sound. And it always changes. I was just reading about the rest of this rotosity or something. That's probably wrong. Non-rhotic or rhotic dialects. Roticity. Yeah, roticity. It's if you pronounce an R or not. And this whole like trend, in the past, the English did pronounce water with the R. And now, over time, the trend has changed and it became water. And the funny thing about this is the English consider themselves the best English speakers, just out of pure coincidence, because they live in a place called England, and the language happens to be called England. But Scotland and Ireland, they still pronounce that R. And that's why they have such beautiful voices. No offense. But I'm from New England, and we also don't pronounce the R. And I don't really speak dialect so much, but it's all just fashion. It's always changing, and like what's hot, what's not, what's in, what's out. It's always on the move. It helps if you just stay current by listening and copying. Obviously, you don't change that much over your lifetime, but if you're learning a new language, then go right to the source. Of course, there is no perfect pronunciation. If you want to learn perfect British pronunciation, do not download the ULMX app, because we have American pronunciation, which I personally think is more international at this point. But the whole thing with like the British R, it's a funny story, and why we have non-roticity, or what do you call it? Non-roticity, I think it's called. Why we are non-rhotic speakers if you speak dialect from the Northeast. It's because as that became a trend in England, the port cities who did the most business with the Brits at the, docks or whatever, or just in, I don't know, actually the higher elites, these high-class people had begun speaking a certain way in England, London, and they kind of influenced those coastal cities like Boston, New York, even like down south, Charlotte. And the rest of the country lagged behind because they weren't with the trend. And then after World War II, when like the radio and stuff became popular, there was kind of a resurgence for the American dialect and identity, and like the pride of just being more American, and pronouncing that R became the standard used in television and broadcast and whatever. And that became kind of standard general pronunciation, general American. Which, I'm with it. I get that. It's just funny that like the trend goes full circle. And if you wait it out long enough, like the people in Scotland, now they sound the coolest of all because they sound kind of British, but also they sound kind of American because they have the R. And they sound, and like people from Ireland, everyone loves their accent. I don't know, I guess everyone says the British accent's cool too. At least it's understandable, I like a good accent that's understandable. That's the most important thing for me. If I can't understand you, your accent's not working for me. But yeah. Yeah, it's a lot of fun with pronunciation. It all comes down to copying. And if you're going for very fine distinctions, it really helps to just practice and speak out loud. And just copy the sound. You don't need to know, is it a a, eh? You don't need to know that by heart. You just need to know how to pronounce the word. And ULMX is really the best for that. Unfortunately, only if you're a native German speaker who wants to improve your English abilities because you had a lot of time in class where you sat, listened, read, didn't speak much. You want to improve your speaking competence and confidence in an environment which you're free to move around. That is for you. Who's the next group that we're going to get? Well, we're working on a Chinese version. We want to help Chinese native speakers who want to improve their English. And ultimately, this app is called Universal Language Media Exchange. So we want to get as many different languages as possible on here. But, it's a small startup, very small startup. Takes a while. That's it for this episode of Universal Language Media Exchange. I hope you like this discussion on phonemes and syllables and just vowels, pronunciation, and copying and improving your own pronunciation, defining your own style a little bit more, and practicing in a way that it's not only fun, it's also really, 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 really effective. So that's it for this time. We'll see you next time, or you'll see me next time. Hope you're warm. I am freezing. Actually, I kind of warmed up in the course of this video, but fall is here in the Northern Hemisphere.
Dieses Video wurde stolz präsentiert von der ULMX-App, verfügbar im App Store für iOS-Geräte. Android-Benutzer und diejenigen, die das Spiel ausprobieren möchten, können den kostenlosen Podcast auf iTunes und Spotify herunterladen. Bitte beim Podcast nicht vergessen, den Pausenknopf zu drücken. Die App pausiert übrigens automatisch für dich, damit du gleichzeitig anderswo produktiv sein kannst.
Diese Folge ist perfekt geeignet fürs erste Treffen mit einem neuen Kollegen. This episode is perfectly suited for your first meeting with a new colleague. Englisch für Guten Tag, Herr Professor. Ich bin der neue Student aus Deutschland ist Good afternoon, Professor. I'm the new student from Germany. Guten Tag, Herr Professor. Ich bin der neue Student aus Deutschland.
Good afternoon, Professor. I'm the new student from Germany.
Good afternoon, Professor. I'm the new student from Germany.
Entschuldigung.
Excuse me.
Excuse me.
Entschuldigung.
Excuse me.
Excuse me.
Guten Tag, Herr Professor. Ich bin der neue Student aus Deutschland.
Good afternoon, Professor. I'm the new student from Germany.
Good afternoon, Professor. I'm the new student from Germany.
Englisch für Störe ich ist Am I interrupting? Störe ich?
Am I interrupting?
Am I interrupting?
Entschuldigung, störe ich?
Excuse me. Am I interrupting?
Excuse me. Am I interrupting?
Ich wollte nicht stören.
I didn't want to interrupt.
I didn't want to interrupt.
Entschuldigung, störe ich?
Excuse me. Am I interrupting?
Excuse me. Am I interrupting?